How are you doing, everybody? Welcome to the Week in YouTube Finance. Thank you for being here. Hope you had a great week. Here's a fist bump for you. Wapow. All right, let's get into it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Whiteboard Finance. My name is Marco and I'm here to help you master your money and build your wealth. Today we're diving into one of the craziest economic domino effects playing out right now. Airline stocks are tanking, government travel is collapsing, and Washington, D.C. is facing job losses at a level we haven't seen since the Great Recession. So what is going on? What's happening? Well, buckle up because this is all part of a much bigger story. It's a massive spending shift that could have global implications. Let's break it down. So at the time of this recording, you can see that airline stocks are getting absolutely decimated. We have United Airlines here, we have Delta Airlines here, JetBlue Airlines here, and American Airlines here. And you can see all their stocks are getting crushed. Why is that? Well, it all started on February 19th when United Airlines CEO sounded the alarm. He said that government-related travel has fallen off dramatically since January 20th, coincidentally the day that President Trump was inaugurated. Historically, United Airlines brings in over $1 billion per year from government-related travel alone. That is a huge chunk of revenue, and when that disappears, it sends shockwaves through the entire airline industry. Just weeks later, on March 11th, Delta Airlines revised its earnings outlooks downward, so revenue growth projections dropped from 8% to just 3.5%, which we can see right here. Margins took a hit, earnings per share were slashed in half, and boom, the stock took a nosedive. American Airlines followed shortly after, cutting its own outlook. They now expect a net loss of 60 to 80 cents per share for quarter one. You can see that right here where my cursor is. And more importantly, they adjusted their flight capacity in the Washington, D.C. area, one of their most profitable regions, because of the collapse in government-related bookings. So just from this, we can already see major trends forming. Government spending is drying up, and businesses that relied on it are scrambling to adjust. So here's the snippet from American saying they adjusted its capacity in the Washington area. It's been one of its most profitable markets as a result of weakness in government-related bookings. If you take a look at Delta Airlines stock, you can see the Trump inauguration here. You can see the DOGE cuts ramping up here in February. You can see United says government travel's down 50% on here, February 20th, and then Delta cuts guidance over here on March 7th or 8th, wherever this red arrow is pointing. Now, if we move forward, airlines are not the only thing that we should be talking about, guys. The real canary in the coal mine are jobless claims in Washington, D.C. So since mid-February, unemployment filings in D.C. surged by 36% in just 1 week. So that put jobless claims above 2007 levels. And if you know your history, you know that's a big red flag. And then on March 6th, Challenger Gray's data confirmed just how deep the cuts have been. Government-related layoffs have surged, with total job cuts hitting over 62,500 in 2025 alone. That's a mind-blowing 41,311% increase from 2024. You can see that in the snippet right here. So this isn't just a small budget adjustment. This is a full-blown spending crackdown. So next, we're going to get into real estate, but take a look at this graphic here before we do that. Unemployment insurance claims by federal employees have spiked amid Trump administration layoffs. Percentage change in initial UI claims by federal employees in 2025 and 2017 compared to the last week of December in the previous year. So look at that difference, you guys. That's insane. So you can see basically 2017 is the orange line, and then 2025 is the green line, and you can see the difference there. Now, let's get into some real estate. So this is another domino that's falling. So the Washington, D.C. housing market. So there could be a million factors to this, but I just thought I'd add this into this presentation. Right now, there are over 10,000 homes for sale in the D.C. area. That number has jumped by nearly 5,000 since November of 2024. Home prices have dropped 21% in just a few months, bringing prices down to their lowest level since January 20th. So for sale inventory is actually growing at an insane 31.6% year over year. That's 8 percentage points higher than what we saw in 2008 during the last major housing crisis. So not only is airline travel down, real estate prices falling in the DC area, now we have expense reports, baby. So the government credit card freeze. Check this out. So if that wasn't enough, here's the final blow. On the same day that Delta and American Airlines cut their guidance, The Department of Government Efficiency announced massive credit card cuts. So take a look at this screenshot here. DOGE has reportedly deactivated over 200,000 government credit cards, about 5% of all U.S. government cards. And guess what? They say more cuts are coming. So this is a clear sign that spending is being reined in at a level that we haven't seen in decades. And for a U.S. economy that's been heavily dependent on government jobs and spending, that is a major shift. So take a look at these two screenshots. You can see down here at the bottom, purchase cards or canceled. So we have 33,600 here, and then we have 171,000 down here. So you can already see that this cut of 200,000 is legit. Okay, this is pretty interesting. I've never seen anything like this. So if we continue, let's take a look at the bigger picture, right? So if we zoom out and connect the dots, over the last 4.5 years, government jobs in the U.S. have increased by 2 million. Okay, let me show you the screenshot here. So you can see that from basically 2021, how much it's ramped up. This is the source for this is DataStream. And this is the 18-month moving average year-over-year percentage. This era might be ending of these, government jobs, government hiring. So in 2024, government spending made up 34% of U.S. GDP. Think about that, you guys. 34% of GDP is government spending. What is that? Never-ending wars? What are we talking about here? What is possibly making up a third of our economy? So this is a record high outside of crisis periods. So this is simply unsustainable, in my opinion. So now the government is tightening its belt. We're seeing ripple effects throughout the entire economy. So airlines losing billions, literally, in market cap, as I showed you in the first slide. DC is shedding jobs. The housing market is slipping. This could just be the beginning, okay? So I'm just showing you data. Again, you can see the DC for sale inventory here. Year over year, it's up 31.6%. The source here is Reventure Consulting. And then finally, you can see the government spending at levels we haven't seen since basically the Gulf War, okay, and close to World War II. So if you take a look at this blue line, that's the federal, state, and local expenditures as a percentage of GDP. So World War II was 36%, Gulf War 34.6%, Great Financial Crisis. That's when I was in college getting my finance degree, 36.9%. And then Cerveza is 42%. Now we're at about 34%. Okay, so with all that being said, what does this mean for you? Well, if you're invested in industries that rely heavily on government spending, airlines, infrastructure, those kinds of things, you need to pay close attention. The rules of the game are changing. And for everyone else, this is just a reminder that government spending has played a massive role in propping up the economy. So if that changes, we could be in for a serious reset. So what do you think? Is this just a temporary adjustment, or are we witnessing a major shift in the economy? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification, share this video with a friend. They take a lot of time and effort to put together. And if you found it useful, send it to 3 friends or family members right now. Start a WhatsApp group. Just call it the Marco Whiteboard Finance Channel WhatsApp group and just let your buddies know when I drop these bangers, okay? So if you're interested in business, finance, the economy, macro, all that stuff, you know I cover all that on my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and have a prosperous day. I need to get me a government job. 34% GDP. Are you serious?
All right, let's check in with Mr. Graham now. Let's see what he's got to say.
What's up, you guys? It's Graham here. So I'm going to be honest, this is one of the craziest markets that I've ever witnessed. Normally, I tend not to be too outspoken about my own thoughts, since I'd like to think the data speaks for itself, but never have I seen such an intense back and forth of economic turmoil while the entire market crashes within minutes of a single remark. And if you thought things were getting messy, as it turns out, this is just the very beginning. In just the last week, we've seen tariff retaliation, stock indexes falling into correction territory, concerns of an upcoming recession, and most recently, as of a few hours ago, we've received some choice words from the Federal Reserve as to what they think is going to happen over the next year, which is probably not what you're expecting. This is why we absolutely have to cover exactly what's happening, what Jerome Powell just said, when they're planning to lower interest rates, and then most importantly, how this is about to affect all things money. Because without exaggeration, this is one of the most important meetings of the entire year, and if you want to come out ahead profitable, keep watching. Although before we start, if you appreciate the last minute breaking news videos, it would mean the world to me if you hit the like button or subscribe if you haven't done that already. I know it sounds silly to ask, but it actually does help out tremendously. And as a thank you for doing that, I'll do my best to read and reply to as many comments as I can. So thanks so much, and also a big thank you to Cook Unity for sponsoring this video, but more on that later. Alright, so in terms of where to start, let's just get the main point out of the way first. Tariffs. Without exaggeration, this has become the single most influential topic for not only the entire economy, but also the entire world. And it's also a topic that seemingly changes by the hour. Like, here's the thing. I could sit here planning out a very detailed video, and by the time I get ready to post it, the entire situation has changed. So when it comes to this topic, here's all I'm going to say. Overall, most economists agree that tariffs are harmful to the economy, to the stock market, and to consumer confidence. Generally, when volatility increases, people spend less, companies scale back, stock prices fall, and videos with flames in the thumbnail get 3 times more views. But in terms of Trump's strategy, he openly believes that short-term pain is the only path to long-term prosperity. In fact, he recently did an interview warning that consumers should prepare for some short-term turbulence. And if you haven't seen that video yet, here you go.
Are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. You can't really watch the stock market. If you look at China, they have a 100-year perspective. We have a quarter.
Basically, whether you agree or disagree with his methods, it seems as though he's using tariffs as a strong negotiation tactic, knowing that it's going to put more pressure on the other country than it will on the United States. Obviously, this is a high-risk strategy, and if other nations refuse to back down, it could spiral into some rather volatile, severe long-term consequences. But considering how this has played out so far, it's worked, and this seems to be exactly what's going to happen. Trump threatens tariffs to start in 30 days. Other country says they'll retaliate. The market drops. 30 days later, Trump either gives a temporary extension, in which case the market goes up, or Trump follows through with his tariffs and the market goes down. Other country then retaliates with their own tariffs, so Trump doubles his tariffs as a punishment, market goes down even more, but 24 to 48 hours later, a temporary agreement is reached and the market goes back up again. There you go. I've just predicted the next year. You can't even make this stuff up. Like, if I give you any more details than that, the video is going to be outdated in a day and people comment, "This aged like milk." But again, regardless of what you think of this strategy, the market has not reacted very kindly, which brings me to my second point, recession fears. Here's the thing. Anytime there's economic uncertainty, companies delay hiring. They reduce their spending, unemployment begins to rise, and that lack of spending shows up as a decline in GDP, of which results in a recession after 2 consecutive quarters. Now, even though this might seem unlikely, when you look at the estimates, you'll begin to see that there's a solid chance that a recession officially starts this year. For instance, the Atlanta Federal Reserve estimated that first quarter GDP may decline by an annualized adjusted rate of 2.4%, which would be the first contraction since 2022. On top of that, JP Morgan put their current recession odds at 40%, owing to extreme US policies. Now, of course, the counter-argument to this is that job growth is still strong. Stocks are still up from where they were a year ago, and abnormally cold weather could be partially responsible for a lack of consumer spending. Although the good news is that if prices do begin to drop, they might soon begin to cut interest rates. And if that happens, you could potentially start making a lot of money, especially when it comes to the stock market. Look, it's no surprise. Trump has been a huge proponent of lowering interest rates. He's publicly pressured Jerome Powell to cut rates since 2019, and most recently, he's called to bring them back down once again. Why? Well, besides being able to refinance the national debt at lower interest rates, there is a direct correlation between cheap money and increased household wealth. So in terms of what you could expect, here's where things get really interesting. A recent study broke down investors into 2 categories. One considered the choice between a risk-free investment earning 5% and a risky investment earning 10%, while the second group made the choice between a risk-free 1% return or a risky 6% return. Now, in both cases, that risky investment pays the exact same 5% more, but the results were vastly different. It was found that low risk-free returns caused significantly more risk-taking for higher-yielding investments, even though technically the difference in payout was the exact same. Or I guess for all of you visual learners out there, when interest rates are at 0%, 70% of their portfolio went into risky investments, but when interest rates were at 5%, only 50% of investors took the risky category, which reflects a more balanced portfolio. All of this suggests that when interest rates are at record lows, investors throw their money into risky investments to earn as much money as possible to make up for it. And when interest rates begin to rise, they pull their money out of the markets to take the risk-free return, causing stock prices to begin to fall. This is why it's theorized that when interest rates eventually fall back down, investors are going to take their money out from the sidelines and throw it back into the economy, into the stock market, causing the prices to begin to recover. Although in terms of what Jerome Powell just said about this and what this means for you, here's what you came for. Although before we go into that, when it comes to making these breaking news style videos, I'm going to be honest. Usually it involves me clearing out the entire day, getting straight. Thank you so much, and now let's get back to the video. Alright, so in terms of the Federal Reserve's recent decision to delay interest rate cuts, all of it comes down to one thing: inflation. That's because when we really get down to it, the Federal Reserve is only keeping interest rates higher for longer as a way to prevent consumer prices from rising more than 2% a year. And in terms of the most recent reading, it came in at, wait for it, 2.8% from a year ago, meaning it's trending downwards, but not as much as they want. Now, in terms of why prices are still above 2%, the largest increase, believe it or not, came from eggs, which were up almost 60% from a year ago. In fact, food away from home, like restaurants and full-service meals, were up 3.7% in the last year. And once you begin to zoom out, you could see that other items like car insurance increased by 11.1%, car repairs went up by 7.9%, apparel is up by 7.5%, and shelter is up by 4.5%, which is actually the lowest increase since December 2021. On top of that, if we remove food and energy from the equation, since those could often be at the whims of seasonality, core CPI fell from 3.3% in January to 3.1% in February, signaling a slight move downwards. Now, even though this can be seen as good news, none of this reflects any potential complications with tariffs, and there is the concern that inflation could soon start to go back up again if people pay an extra cost on everyday items. Like, if you want any specifics on this, the Boston Federal Reserve went on record to say that the new tariffs could add a minimum of 0.5 percentage point to core PCE inflation, and the earlier tariffs could have added a maximum of 2.2 percentage points, keeping all else in the economy constant. That's why when it comes to the Federal Reserve meeting today, here's what they had to say. As of a few hours ago, they've decided not to lower interest rates and instead take a wait-and-see approach until more data gets released. After all, they still have concerns about inflation rising from tariffs. They're worried that they might have to pivot if unemployment begins to rise. And by giving it a little more time and waiting for the next 2 months, they're going to be that much more confident when they make a more permanent decision. On top of that, Jerome Powell did speak about the possibility of future rate cuts later this year. And even though he didn't say exactly when it's going to happen, we could end up seeing a 25 basis point rate cut over the summer and perhaps another by winter, depending on if prices continue on their downward trend. And if not, we're probably going to see higher rates for longer. Although in terms of what I think about all of this, here's my honest opinion. I have to say that we should reduce our expectations for all these recent proposals and tariff threats. Like, let's just start with this one. No taxes for Americans earning under $150,000 a year. On the surface, great idea. I think we could reduce income taxes if we reduced government waste and spending by the exact same amount. Except this time, people would have more money left over at their disposal to do with whatever they want. And if this were passed, 93% of Americans would pay nothing to the IRS whatsoever. But realistically, the chance of this actually going through is slim to non-existent, and I thought this post by the Money Cruncher really summed it up perfectly. He clarifies that people making under $150,000 a year contribute $330 billion a year towards income tax, but in order to maintain equality across all income groups, you would have to increase the base deduction to $150,000, or at least have some phase-out range. That way, the first $150,000 anybody earns is tax-free, regardless of if you make $149,000 or $151,000. But now all of a sudden, if you do this, it ends up costing $1 trillion a year, not including the impacts to Social Security or Medicare. Can this be done if we find a way to reduce government spending by $1 trillion? Yeah, theoretically. Can this be done by tariffs? Anything is possible. But the likelihood of this actually going through, as much as I like it, is probably not worth seriously considering. I think the same thing also applies to the $5 million gold card that'll allow anyone to buy US citizenship. And here's what Trump had to say about it.
We're going to call it the gold card. If we sell 1 million, right, 1 million, that's $5 trillion. $5 trillion. if we sell 10 million, which is possible, 10 million highly productive people, that's $50 trillion. That means our debt is totally paid off, and we have $15 trillion above that. And now I don't know that we're going to sell that many. Maybe we won't sell many at all, but I think we're going to sell a lot.
Okay, so if you missed that, if we sell 10 million of these, that's $50 trillion in revenue. That would be enough to pay off the entire national debt and then some. Except what he doesn't tell you is that there's only 9 million people in the entire world with a net worth of at least $5 million. And the majority of those people already live within the United States. So in order for this to work, with the numbers that he's quoting, every single person outside the United States who has at least $5 million would have to buy this, which realistically is just not going to happen. Most likely, I think the bare minimum to even consider doing something like this would be a net worth of at least $10 million, which, like I said earlier, most of those people already live within the United States. That's why, from my perspective, someone would probably need about $30 million to consider buying citizenship for $5 million. And when you look at how many people actually have that sort of wealth outside of the United States, it's about 376,000 people. From those numbers, I'd bet that most of those people are probably already happy where they live. But assuming if 10% of those people end up buying it, that's $185 billion worth of revenue to the United States. Yes, that's still a lot of money, but it's not paying off national debt levels. I say all of this just to set the tone that anything that gets proposed is probably going to be watered down through Congress, a lot of things get overpromised, tax breaks are probably going to be a lot more modest than a lot of people expect, and tariff threats are probably just going to be a back and forth negotiation until eventually everything gets resolved. Sure, it's going to be a bumpy ride in the process, but welcome to the entire economy, where there's always something to worry about. That's why I'm just continuing to dollar cost average into the markets on a regular basis, regardless of where it trades. I'd bet we probably see 2 small rate cuts at some point this year, and if you're getting spooked by all the volatility, it's probably best just don't check, stick with the plan as normal, and no matter what, smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't done that already. So thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Also, big thank you again to Cook Unity for sponsoring this video. Their information's down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.
All right, so we all know that price predictions are crazy. They're almost never right, except for when they become a prophecy. This is gonna sound absolutely crazy, because it is, but something just happened in the Bitcoin space that no one can explain. It all started thanks to this guy, Josh Mandel, who back in November 2024, when Bitcoin was $74,000, predicted that on March 14th, a day known as Pi Day, that Bitcoin would reach exactly $84,000 to the dollar. Back in November, very few people paid any attention to his prediction, but as it got closer to March 14th, things started to get a lot more interesting. By March 11th, Josh Mandel said the seemingly impossible was in play, tweeting 84K on Pi Day with reference to the song The Impossible Dream. So March 14th rolls around, I'm on Twitter. I'm seeing this guy's tweets. I'm seeing Twitter blow up because of how close his prediction is getting. There's a few hours left to go for the market close, and I know that it needs to close at exactly $84,000 by 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So I look at Bitcoin's price, and it's within a couple $100. I'm thinking, there is no way that some random guy on the internet is about to predict this correctly to this degree of accuracy. But then, 8 p.m. Eastern rolls around, I refresh Twitter, and depending on the exchange people were looking at, Bitcoin finished the day at exactly $84,000. Now, some people joked, Josh either controls $10 billion of liquidity or he speaks to angels. But that's not the crazy part. The crazy part is what he said would happen if he ended up being right. Because in that same prediction that he made way back in November, he said that if we reach 84K, the next price target would be $444,402.75. And I thought this was worth making a video about, to help explain this crazy prophecy, who this guy is, how he was able to do it, and most importantly, how Bitcoin might actually reach that price target relatively soon, thanks to the United States. It goes without saying, this video is going to be very speculative, but I do want to help explain the absolute insanity that just happened. So with that said, let's get into it. Hi, my name is Andre Jick. Hope you're doing well. Come for the finance and stay for the Bitcoin. This video is going to be very astrology girly of me, but I'm a Dragon Capricorn rising. So according to Josh's prediction, Bitcoin's bull cycle will peak somewhere around $444,000. Now, this very specific number comes from a poetic prophecy that Josh posted online, and here's what he said. When 84 becomes the base, Bitcoin calls will melt their face. This is how you get ahead. Buy IBIT calls in size instead. 10 to 1 you'll write it up. The stock it soars into the skies. Then sell the call and exercise. See the path of Pistol Pete. Try a slug and then repeat. Look at every day at close and lows. When 84 is on the dot, the car will launch. A real whole shot. Feel the G's. Hear the roar. The coin won't stop. 360 more, a trio of fours, times $1,000, that's the top. So that sounds absolutely insane, but let's just break it down. Translated into simple language, the trio of 4 times 1,000 equals 444,000, and adding 360 more on top of 84 gives us that same ballpark of 444. He's even given the prophecy an exact number. $444,402.75. Now, where he gets that extra $402.75 is part of the mystery. But people are saying that if he was able to get that first part of his prediction so specifically back from November of last year, it makes sense that the second part of that prediction could come true as well. And if it does, it would melt faces, surpassing even the craziest mainstream predictions of what Bitcoin could be worth this year or this cycle. Now, if you're thinking, this guy sounds kind of crazy, just look at what he's been able to do so far. He started his account with $2.1 million back when Bitcoin hit 105,000 in January. So Josh took out a $2.1 million short position, saying that he thought the market would drop, and that's exactly what ended up happening, and he was able to turn $2.1 million into over $22 million. So at this point, I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't already calculating my future net worth if his prediction comes true, but the first question is, who is this guy and how is he doing it? Because chances are you've never heard of him, but he's not just some random guy on Twitter. He used to be a Wall Street trader at the Solomon Brothers and Caxton Associates. So this guy has a lot of trading experience, but still, no amount of trading on Wall Street would give someone the gift of foresight, so how the heck's he doing it? He says that the way he was able to make his prediction goes back to something he saw 30 years ago. The truth is that I have a very specific prediction based on memories of something that happened 30 years ago, combined with thoughts which seem ever present in my mind. That's what he cryptically told everyone on Twitter, and this has led to a lot of theories, all the way from mathematical to just outright aliens. Now, one of my favorite theories that I saw out there is that there's some numerological pattern to his predictions, because all of the key numbers and dates in his predictions seem to align with the famous 369 pattern. Now, Nikola Tesla once said, if you only knew the magnificence of the 3, 6, and 9, then you would have a key to the universe. Nikola Tesla believed that these numbers weren't random, but they were part of a hidden universal code. And the crazy part is that all of Josh's numbers reduce down to 3s, 6s, and 9s. This is about to blow your mind. I don't know if it explains anything, but the coincidence is kind of scary. For example, his original price prediction, which was $84,000, reduces down to 3. Here's how. 8 plus 4 equals 12, and then 1 plus 2 equals 3. Then the date, 11/5/2024, November 5th, which is when he made his first prediction. That reduces down to 6. Here's how. 1 plus 1 plus 5 plus 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 4 equals 15, then 15 can be reduced to 1 plus 5, which is 6. And it gets crazier. His $444,402.75 has a digital root of 3. 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 0 plus 2 plus 7 plus 5 equals 30. And 3 plus 0 equals 3. And his short position, when Bitcoin was at 105,000, has a digital root of 6. So we have 3, 6, 3, 6. Added together is 18. And 1 plus 8 reduces to 9. Oh, and remember that extra $402.75 on top of his base prediction? That reduces down to 9 as well. So we have our pairs of 3s, 6s, and 9s. Now, I don't know if that necessarily explains anything, but his predictions do have a very interesting mathematical symmetry to them that I think Nikola Tesla probably would have been like, I knew it. Now where's my pigeons? Which gets even crazier when you consider that Josh did once say that he's a believer in simulation theory, which actually supports the idea that reality might have some mathematical pattern at its core, which makes reality predictable. Or this could be just one giant coincidence, but here's where things take an even crazier turn. Because as unbelievable as $444,000 sounds, there's actual real evidence to suggest this number could be possible for this cycle. And it's not because of some mystical prophecy, but because of the US government. By the way, I wanted to share something that could be really helpful if you're looking to level up your finances. Whether you're saving, investing, or just trying to make smarter money moves, having solid credit can make a huge difference, and that's where Kickoff comes in. Kickoff is a credit building tool designed to help you improve key credit factors without all the headaches. It's the #1 credit building app on the App Store and has been praised by Credit Karma and NerdWallet as a smart and easy way to build credit. Signing up takes just minutes, no credit check, no interest, no hidden fees, and plans start at just $5 a month. Your on-time payments get reported to all 3 credit bureaus, helping you build payment history and lower utilization. Users with credit under 600 saw an average increase of 25 points in just 1 month and up to 84 points in a year. I know that when I apply for a loan, having a better credit profile can mean saving me thousands on interest, and that's money that I can use for things that actually matter. If your credit is holding you back, Kickoff is the safest and easiest way to build it quickly. Right now, they're giving my audience 80% off your first month, and you can start for as low as $1. Click the link in the description down below and take control of your credit today. Thank you, Kickoff, for supporting the channel, and now let's get back to it. So here is how Bitcoin can reach over $400,000. Just recently, Andrew Hohns, the CEO of New Market Capital, introduced the concept of Bit Bonds at the Bitcoin Policy Institute for America event. His proposal is asking that the US government issue $2 trillion in bonds. Remember, this is how the US government borrows money, by creating bonds. And it would allocate 10% of that $2 trillion, that's $200 billion, to buy Bitcoin, and with the remaining 90% funding regular government operations. Now, these bonds would offer an annual interest rate of 1%, which is significantly lower than the current US 10-year rate of approximately 4.5%. And this reduction could save the government $70 billion per year in interest expenses that it would have to pay to foreign governments and other investors. And over 10 years, that would save the United States $700 billion. Now, after 10 years, bondholders would be entitled to get their interest plus up to 50% of Bitcoin's price growth. So by integrating Bitcoin into the national debt strategy, the government wouldn't just diversify its financial portfolio, but it could also benefit from Bitcoin's long-term growth. So the next question is, could this happen? And the answer is yes. Right now, a bill has been reintroduced in Congress, a bill that, if passed, would require the United States to start buying Bitcoin as part of its national reserves. Now, this is not just speculation. Senator Cynthia Lummis has been pushing to create a Bitcoin strategic reserve. And if this bill passes, the government would begin buying 1 million Bitcoin over the next 5 years, which at today's prices would cost the United States about $80 billion. Now that's about 5% of the entire Bitcoin supply. And if that's completely removed from circulation, if the government starts buying at this scale, that could create the perfect storm for Bitcoin to actually be pushed toward Josh's $444,000 price target. Not because of magic or prophecy, but because of a government-backed Bitcoin supply shock that could push the demand just high enough. But having said all this, let me just tie it all together and give you my personal thoughts as someone who stands to financially benefit a lot if his prediction were to come true. Whether you believe Josh's vision from 30 years ago, or his 369 numerology, or you just think this is all a crazy coincidence, the reality is something big is happening in the Bitcoin space, and it's going to happen whether that's this year or in the next 4 years from now, but I'm cautiously optimistic about all of it. Even though I believe this could be a possibility, as much as I want to invest every dollar that I have in Bitcoin, I don't know what I don't know. And the part of me that's ignorant and doesn't know is the part of me that is diversified. And I assign at least 70% of me to the part that doesn't know. But there is something valuable to remember. Every Bitcoin cycle has its prophet. That one person that seems to know something everyone else doesn't. But I think you have to be very careful with predictions, especially when they come with any level of showmanship. And this is coming from someone who loves to perform in front of the camera, because performers are storytellers. And I think Josh does a really great job at creating a cool story. For example, he said there were secret rules from 30 years ago that Josh says explains all of his predictions, but were lost in the 9/11 destruction, implying that it might relate to some obscure financial model or even a lost code book from the Solomon brothers. And I think it's that theatrical style that should make someone stop and be a little cautious. There's also talks about something called the fourth turning, a generational theory which says that historic cycles repeat every 80 to 90 years as part of some grand cyclical pivot. And that could be possible, but it sounds like good old-fashioned showmanship. Just be careful and remember, when there's enough mysticism, it creates a very faithful fan base, and it elevates the performer to almost a godlike status that people worship. And there's no doubt that Josh has some incredible godlike talent to make money trading and reading charts, but beyond that, I probably wouldn't look too deep into this as some kind of mystical prophecy that will 100% come true. It's cool to think about, and it's exciting, and maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. It's entertaining, and we'll find out if it comes true in the next few years, but at least for now, I'm staying diversified, and I'm not putting all my eggs into one basket, no matter how much I love that basket. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. I'd love to see you back here next week. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for checking in. I definitely appreciate you being here. As you can see, I'm growing. Please do me the favor, like, subscribe, help me get to 20. I want to get to 20. Let's do this thing. All right. I don't know what I'm doing. Goodbye. See you next time.